Hi, my name is Christina Finnegan, and this is my mind map. The central and largest image on my poster is a school, because we, the educators in schools around the world, will always be at the center of practitioner research. Everything residing on the outside of my school is intended to represent a challenge that practitioner researchers face. I've drawn the American flag to represent the political climate and policy in U.S. education. This part of my mind map breaks down into 3 sections. Smith and Lytle pointed to 3 dimensions that seem especially toxic to the core elements of the practitioner research movement. The first of these is education directly linked to economic status, in the sense that many believe that our nation's place in the global economy depends solely on the quality of our education system. As I was reading this section of text, I couldn't help but think about the Common Core standards and the constant references to college and career readiness. Additionally, policymaking in the U.S. has shifted from low-profile agencies to the highest levels of government and even business. The second dimension deemed problematic is test-based accountability associated with a recurring language of outcomes, results, effectiveness, evidence, monitoring, test scores, and bottom lines, terms that we're used to hearing. From this perspective, teaching equals a transmission of agreed-upon knowledge, and learning equals the demonstration of this knowledge, ultimately on high-stakes tests. The third dimension is the emphasis on evidence, science, and scientism. This reflects the belief that science can save our nation's educational problems. Terms like scientifically based research and evidence-based instruction reflect the turn toward science, analysis, and data in education. This dimension positions practitioners as the recipients of other people's knowledge, not as professionals capable of making difficult decisions about what should be taught. It seems to cheapen our job description, as it does not take into account or value the expertise that countless educators bring to the table. It's crazy to think that the individualized challenges in our own classrooms can be solved by an analytical technique or a researcher who has never stepped foot into a classroom. To use Smith and Lytle's words, people who teach differently, who advocate for students, who take leadership roles in their schools or district or universities, and who question current assumptions, the teachers we often like to think of ourselves as, well, we are not always considered knowers. Instead, the knowers, as I stated earlier, are high-profile agencies including presidents, governors, corporate CEOs, and so on. Unfortunately, high-stakes tests are asking teachers to be mere transfers of knowledge. The authenticity, passion, and expertise of many educators is being taken for granted. In the inside of my school, and on a much more positive note, I've represented the 5 themes moving practitioner research forward. The first is the emphasis on issues of equity, engagement, and agency. An incredible amount of books centered on equity have been published in recent years, a huge success when considering the many inequities that we know exist in the realm of public education. Practitioner researchers are helping to surface these inequalities, and prominent teacher networks, such as the National Writing Project and the Breadloaf Teacher Network, just to name a couple, are even involving parents and students in the fight. Finally, some practitioners are actually co-constructing curriculums with students with the hope of inspiring change in school communities and beyond. Teacher-practitioner research is also thriving when it comes to developing conceptual frameworks. The second of the 5 themes included inside the school building. In other words, practitioners are theorizing about their own teaching. For example, Gerald Campano's Immigrant Students in Literacy, Reading, Writing, and Remembering posed the question, what would it mean to develop curricula that acknowledges our students' unique social identities, not as problems, but as profound sources of knowledge that could help us illuminate aspects of our shared world and inform the ways we conceptualize our pedagogies? Campano's question lends itself to inquiry and meaningful research, and it even questions the current policy and political climate that requires every student to take a high-stakes test that is likely to be culturally biased. Theme 3 of the teacher-practitioner movement deals with inventing and reinventing communities of inquiry. When the accountability movement sped up, high-stakes tests took the spotlight, and many people doubted the idea that practitioners could identify inquiry questions and even co-construct curricula with students. Instead, curricula that government agencies, CEOs, and other bigwigs deemed important was adopted because it was research-based and made big promises. Still, new technologies have allowed organizations like the Breadloaf Network to link rural and public teachers for intensive study and research of student language and literacy, just to name one example. Local groups close by, such as PTLA, have met every week in Philly for more than 30 years to use structured and oral inquiry to improve student learning. Some groups are even smaller, consisting of only 2 or 3 teachers who meet regularly in order to engage in practitioner research. Furthermore, the North American Action Research Alliance encourages exchanges between people doing research in different fields. This particularly resonated with me because my best friend at work is a school nurse who recently received her master's and a certificate to teach. It's incredible how much we have to talk about, and it turns out that good teaching is good teaching no matter what the field. Before moving on to the next theme, I do feel the need to briefly bring up the dangers of expanding communities of inquiry as noted by Smith and Lytle. The publicness of some of these forums can lend itself to commercialization, control, and as the authors note, the selling of teaching rather than the interrogating it in order to improve it. Theme 4 surrounds itself on shaping school reform and educational policy. Instead of investing in one-shot deal workshops and professional development, practitioner research is supporting the notion of teachers studying in their own schools. In some schools, teachers are moving beyond the data derived from high-stakes tests and moving toward the process of closely analyzing student work. Additionally, there are other groups such as Project Soul designed to investigate teacher leaders as they relate to school change. Beyond the school level, networks like the Teacher Network Policy Institute are trying to make teachers' voices heard in the school policy arena. This network aims to show policymakers the consequences of their policies turned into practice. The 5th and final theme deals with reforming research and practicing universities. This reform, with regard to practitioner research, is quite visible as the number of books, articles, and theses dealing with practitioner research have tremendously increased over the past 10 years. Practitioner research is also relevant when it comes to pre-service teacher education programs at the college level. Inquiry communities have flourished at the university level, and school-university partnerships have even been made. One notable partnership mentioned by Smith and Lytle, called Researching Schools, is actually based on a 6-year partnership between the University of Cambridge and 8 schools in Great Britain. Even though part of the research dealt with researching the partnership itself, classroom action research also took place. Still, this school-university partnership faced challenges. The climate greatly reflected the climate here in America, and many of the teachers focused on the value of their own research as it applied to their own classrooms rather than the bigger picture. Smith and Lytle included the Researching Schools example because it reflects so many of the challenges that practitioner research can bring. Still, Smith and Lytle described many triumphs with regard to practitioner research, and I'm pretty sure that as long as there are passionate teachers in America's classrooms and around the world, there will also be individuals looking to invest time into this kind of research.